Well, you guys wanted me to watch more classic movies, right? Let's get started. What's going on, you guys? James here with the very first Real Rewind. Now, you're probably wondering what the heck that is. That's me going through old classic films that you've suggested I watch, and yes, I haven't seen them before. So The Sound of Music, Raging Bull, like we're going to talk about today, and there's some old horror classics as well. Guys, I'm excited to just dive into these. Oh, and there's one very famous one, Gone with the Wind. I haven't watched that either. So you're getting my very first reactions to some of these old films, and I'm so excited to start the series. But before we get started talking about Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull, if this is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James. Now, if you're wondering who that is, that's me, and I love talking all about movies. So if you like what you hear and what you see, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to tap on the bell right next to it just to stay up to date with anything new that I'm doing. Guys, Netflix is popping off. I just got done with Hollywood. I'm dropping a full series review this week, and there's so much more to talk about in the next couple of weeks with all these big releases. You're not going to want to miss out. And don't forget to go ahead and like this video, share it with all your friends, and get loud in the comments below, guys. Is this your favorite Martin Scorsese film? Is this Robert De Niro's best performance? And which classic film do you want me to watch next? Alrighty, guys, so let me waste no more time and let's hop right into Raging Bull. Again, like I said, it's directed by Martin Scorsese and it stars Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Kathy Moriarty, and even Frank Vincent. Basically, the whole gang is here. If you've seen Goodfellas and all those different mobster movies like Casino, they're all back, and it's going to be a ton of fun. Well, fun by a very loose definition, because this movie is very tough to get through sometimes. Robert De Niro plays boxer Jake LaMotta. He's nicknamed the Raging Bull, an Italian New Yorker who has got a fresh mouth, very violent. He has a huge temper in and out of the ring, and unfortunately, there's a lot of scenes where he just definitely mistreats his wife, or his wives. He has a couple throughout the course of this film. But Robert De Niro reigned king that year because he won an Oscar for his role. I mean, his performance is Oscar worthy. It's definitely a legendary Robert De Niro performance. But like I said, it's a tough movie to watch because there are a lot of slurs here, racial slurs, and the language doesn't necessarily age very well. I mean, there were moments where I had to cringe and I'm like, gosh, why are you talking to each other like that? Can we just be nice? But you know, this is exactly what it was back in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken, 1946. So Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese really did a good job at capturing that period of time in New York and the United States. But boy, it was really, really hard to get through. I love that the movie started with LaMotta in 1946 and then flashes back to him boxing 5 years prior. It basically shows you at the beginning where he leveled out and his fall, and then it shows you his rise by us flashing back. So Martin Scorsese playing with time here was really, well, very Martin Scorsese, but it was pretty well done. I know a lot of people don't like that this movie was filmed in black and white, but I loved how it was filmed. I mean, the black and white, the whole noir look almost, it just was great, and it made me focus even more so on the facial features of each actor. I mean, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Kathy Moriarty, they could all act with their eyes in this film, and it was perfect. Now, there's something about Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro when they get on screen together, even in The Irishman from last year. It's just magical. Their chemistry is great. I mean, they yell at each other a lot. There's a lot of expletives, and man, they are angry Italian Americans, but it is just fantastic to watch on screen. So I cannot believe I went this long without watching this film because I absolutely adore both of them in any roles that pair them alongside one another. So they're great in this film, and Joe Pesci is back to yelling, so he's not like he was in The Irishman, very quiet. Here he is absolutely angry. Now, what I love about what the screenwriters did here is how they framed the story. I mean, Mardik Martin, who did New York with Martin Scorsese, and Paul Schrader, who famously wrote the screenplay for Taxi Driver, again a Martin Scorsese collaboration. They just knew how to work very well in fleshing out Scorsese's vision. I mean, this film was coming on the cusp of what most people said was Martin Scorsese's last breath of air, and what it did was revitalize his career. It was just such a great masterclass in how you can write an effective 3-act story without pretty much making it boring. I get it. Some of the conversations lingered, and that's one of the lone negatives about the film, is that sometimes things last too long. And I get it, you want to, linger on a certain conversation for emotional appeal, but sometimes the movie finds its faults in being a little too, I don't want to say boring, but a little too uneventful. And I also don't necessarily care for the cinematography in the first half of the film in the ring. I've seen better shot boxing films like Creed and Rocky and Creed 2, they're fantastic, and they've pretty much set a new standard for boxing films and how they're shot. But here, I think the gem is in the second half of the film, where you start to see what looks like, flashes of lights from the bulbs of the cameramen in the audience, and then you see the Raging Bull just knocking out someone and blood's coming out. It's so over the top sometimes, but it works really well for the film. And I thought that sometimes I got lost in the boxing, and I almost forgot that Jake LaMotta, even though I was rooting for him in the moment, is really a bad person. And that leads into the next point I want to talk about with this film. Robert De Niro, I love him. Exceptional actor. He's on the Mount Rushmore of actors for me. But boy, does he play a character who's probably one of the most unlikable characters in cinematic history. Jake LaMotta is just a jerk. The way he treats women, the way he looks at other people, even people of color, it is just awful. And I get that the movie is capturing a very specific part of New York, or time in New York, I should say. But boy, was this just a very infuriating movie to watch. Yes, you wanted to just grab Jake LaMotta by the ear and say, stop thinking about people like that. But luckily, he does get his own, especially by the third act of the film. You start to see the downfall of the once great Jake LaMotta, the middleweight champion of the world. Now, I know what people are going to say. Robert De Niro, he's the gem. He's the main dude. And I get it, because he won an Oscar. But Joe Pesci steals the show for me. Every scene he's in, he just commands. There's one particular scene where him and his brother, Jake, are sitting at the dinner table, and they just got done with the meal, and they're having this really important conversation about how Jake has to go fight a nobody. And let me tell you, Joe Pesci commands the screen. There's an amazing quote that he drops: if you win, you win, and if you lose, you still win. Like, I'm telling you, the way Joe Pesci says it, I can just hear him saying it in my head. It's fantastic, and it's just well executed. Martin Scorsese really is on that Mount Rushmore of directors for me, and while Raging Bull isn't in his top 5 and it might not make his top 10 for me, I still think that this is an enjoyable film at the end because of the cinematic value. It is, again, a film that'll make you grind your teeth, you'll get upset, but Raging Bull is a movie that's well worth my time and probably your time as well. However, if you're not a fan of sitting through some very tough scenes that depict domestic abuse, this might not be your cup of tea. But if you're a fan of sports movies that don't necessarily revolve around the sport, this is definitely a prime example of that. So if I had to rate Raging Bull, I would probably give it 4 boxing gloves out of 5, only because, like I said, there's some pacing issues. Scenes that linger don't necessarily have a lot of that emotional weight for me, maybe because I'm not watching it on the big screen, but I just don't think that some of it translates well to 2020. However, I still think Scorsese directs a fantastic film. The script really is a masterclass in how to talk about the rise and fall of a champion, and man, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Kathy Moriarty, they all have it in this film. Alrighty, you guys, well, there you have it. The first real rewind is in the books with Raging Bull. Now, I want to know what you guys want me to watch next, so go in the comments, let me know which classic film I need to visit, and man, there are some that I haven't watched that I'm excited to go ahead and dive into this week. Again, if you haven't already and you loved what you heard and what you saw, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. Now remember, every like, every comment, every share helps me out, and I just love talking with you guys, so get loud in the comments, let's have a conversation about it. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys at the next screening.